It's SJG D2 HBCU football.
Sleep on Livingstone if you want to, and they can really punish you for it.
Fayetteville State, they're never sexy, but they won.
Sometimes we have to eat our crow, and I got to eat my crow this week, okay?
Doom alert. Yeah, we're back at Heartbreak Hotel, and we're checking back in.
What's going on, D2 HBCU world? It's SJG, it's K-Ferg, and we are heading into week one of the D2 HBCU football season. Excited to have you guys here, man. We've actually had some games go on, so we got some stuff to talk about from last week, as well as getting forward into the upcoming week. As always, I am here with my partner in crime, the one and only Chris Ferguson, aka D2 K-Ferg. Chris, how you feeling today, man? You doing all right?
I'm still trying to hydrate from the weekend.
Now, was all that football inflicted, or was it, or was it a little bit more than that?
No, the only thing that was hotter than the football was the weather. I mean, 90 degrees in the middle of the day. It was hot.
Right. Yeah, it definitely was. So shout out to everybody that is in the stream. We have a lot to talk about, looking back again at last week, as well as looking forward to this week. So Chris was in the heat. It wasn't quite as hot where I was, but I did find myself over in Salisbury, North Carolina, going to the birthplace of Black college football, Livingstone College, the Blue Turf. You know how that goes. And so they're excited. They got 7 home games this year. And, I decided to make the smart trip and not go to West Virginia. It turned out to be a smart thought. We thought we'll go on that in just a little bit. But ahead of that, we'll see one of the plays that was actually worth watching for the 2.5 quarters that I stayed at the game. This play by Delonte DeLoach, it kind of speaks for itself. So.
Fake. He gets off.
Play action.
And he still catches it. And it's still a reception. And it's still a reception by DeLoach.
Oh no! Kobe, it was so nice. We were gonna let him see that replay.
Fake. He gets off.
Play action.
And he still catches it. And it's still a reception. And it's still a reception by DeLoach.
Hey,
that was good. That was great awareness by the young freshman quarterback, Christopher Long. See another replay on that one. He most definitely got away. The pressure was coming. Oop, makes a step. Still gets the ball off management. The way to lock in on the ball for DeLoach. Secure the catch. That was good right there.
Yeah, man. So, thanks so much, Kobe. And that was courtesy of the Blue Bear Network on the CIAA Sports Network. And they can do some really great work over there. So, tough game for Livingstone. They did not have it against Charleston, to say the least. Got off to a rough start, made a couple drives in the middle of the game where it looked like they might, put up a fight, but that was not to be. So I think the final score in that game, 34-7. They did put up some points at the end after I left, so maybe it was my fault. I don't know. We'll blame it on SJG. Everybody else does. Chris, I know you were at a game that had a lot of eyes on it, a lot of intrigue. We had a lot of CIAA-SIAC matchups, and you were at one of them. So, talk to me about that a little bit.
Oh, man. So, I hadn't been – there's a lot of stadiums that I'm just trying to get to just to see. And Kentucky State was one of those stadiums. I had never been to the campus, so I decided to make the drive up to see them play Union. And, got on there. A shout out to Buddy Myers, talked to his dad a little bit before the game started. They kind of travel to see their son. I think that's pretty cool. Going into this game, I was like, man, am I missing something? Because, there was a lot of hype, from the SIAC side. And I was like, man, first drive for Union, it was an interception. And that was Kentucky State took the lead off a very short field. I'm like, oh, man. No. It was 69 unanswered points. It was Jada left, Jada right, Jada straight ahead. Just long touchdown runs, big pass plays by RJ Rosales. That Union defensive line, it just seemed like it just got better as the game went on. And they just took up where they left off. I mean, it was great if you are a Union fan, but man, Kentucky State just, they just weren't very accurate. And I think a lot of that may have had to do with that defensive line. They had some opportunities for some pass plays, but at least the quarterback, very mobile quarterback. But they just didn't really have a lot of answers for that Union defense and offense.
Yeah, I think we got a couple highlights here that kind of illustrate, a little bit of what happened. So let's check that out.
That's all I needed. That's all I needed for him to do that. And it became personal with me.
Yeah. Look, there were some eyes lighting up all over, not only in Kentucky, but also throughout SIAC land when they took that first 7-point lead. But quickly they found out what their friends over at Valdosta State found out a couple years ago, that Jada Byers is for real. It's the beginning of the season. He does appear to be healthy, and he ran for a good smooth 2+ on him on about 10 carries. We'll talk about Virginia Union a little bit later because they do have a key game coming up this week. But that was kind of the theme for this week, right? Week 0, the first week 0 of the Division II in history. We had 3 CIAA SIAC matchups, and not just that one, not just the second one, and not just the third one, but all 3 of the matchups went the CIAA's way. Chris, obviously we're talking about Virginia State with the 23-7 win over the two-time, let me get that correct, let me give them their respect, the 2-time defending Benedict Tigers. And we also had Johnson C. Smith coming up with a 21-13 win over the Tuskegee University Golden Tigers. I'm not gonna mix those two up. Golden Tigers. Chris, your thoughts? Is this about what you expected?
I thought that the CIAA was going to go 2-1. I thought that Tuskegee would have a little bit more than what they actually showed. It just seemed like Tuskegee couldn't figure out what to do on quarterback. They kept this carousel, and as the old saying goes, if you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. And that's kind of what happened. It just felt like, whereas JCSU had a bit of a new look offense in quite a few places with Darius Ocean at quarterback and Quaverius Couch at running back, taking and creating most of the running offense. And boy, did they show out. Those two, along with Brevin Caldwell, really showed up in key moments on offense. And man, you can't talk about JCSU now without talking about how good that defense was, and just continuing to stop Tuskegee when it mattered most. Even when they were giving up big plays, particularly with the quarterback from Tuskegee running for first downs. And so, in the end, they did just enough to get by, and that's all you need sometimes. And so for first game, it was a great debut for JCSU in particular.
Right. And I see with your username, you're giving a tribute there to Coach Mo Flowers, whose team took care of business, gave the CIAA a 3-0 sweep of the SIAC. A couple more of those matchups coming this week. We'll see if the SIAC has a chance to get its face back. Guys, let us know what you think. Did this prove that the CIAA at least for the 2024 iteration of it, is the superior league to the SIAC. Let us know in the comments. We definitely like to hear from all of you guys. Also, we also had a couple matchups against out-of-conference matchups between NCAA Division II teams. Miles College took on West Alabama. Came up a little bit short at the end, and Valdosta State, Albany State, there was nothing short about the end that it came up under. When you talk about going up against Valdosta State, what, if anything, do you take from those two matchups, Chris?
Man, Miles' defense is really, really good. I thought that game was going to be kind of a low-scoring affair, and that's what it turned out to be. And they were kind of hanging around, Miles kind of hanging around, and they took that lead, in the fourth quarter, going into the fourth quarter. And it was just like, man, like, is this going to come down to what I think it's going to come down to? And exactly what happened with West Alabama kicking that game-winning walk-off field goal to win the game. But yeah, Miles' defense is definitely as advertised, and I'm very curious to see what happens when they play Alabama State coming up. Now, if we got to talk about Albany for a little bit, oh gosh, I mean, they just ran into a buzzsaw. You can't spot Valdosta 21 points, and you're not able to get into that end zone when you do score and settle for a field goal. That just wasn't going to cut it, and so they fell behind so quickly, and it was just a deluge. I mean, not much you could really do except get more victories and move on to the next game.
Yeah, as we talk about those two teams, there were two other Georgia teams too. As we get started ready to transition from week 0 into week 1. Thanks for joining us for the HBCU Game Day D2 football show. We have we had a game that, I think a lot of people probably didn't expect the way that it went to go the way that it went, which was Clark Atlanta, Fort Valley State. Some would say that, this is probably the most competitive game, involving two HBCUs for sure. And also just overall with new head coach Keaton coming over to Clark Atlanta. They didn't play on the red field. That happens this week, but they did take a chance to go over to Fort Valley State team that a lot of people think may be in that, have thought as an SIAC championship contender. Chris, we got treated to a game. I know you probably had to catch it afterwards because you were at the other game, but the show that David Wright put on, we talked about him previously. We talked about him last year. We talked to Coach Keaton right here on this show last year. Last year is kind of up and down, 18 touchdowns and 19 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. But, he had a rough start early, but after that, he just went absolutely – the Thundercats were loose after that, man. He had 7 touchdowns. I know you didn't watch Thundercats, Chris, but I'm sure you got it. He had 7 touchdowns in the air. Clark Atlanta defense was good for the second, third quarters. The fourth quarter, they kind of let up a little bit. But what are your thoughts on what we saw out of the SIAC with Fort Valley State and Clark Atlanta?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks are kind of just wondering what Clark was going to look like going into this season. They had transfers come in, but sometimes trying to get them to gel with the existing players and other transfers that weren't from Allen could take some time. But man, like after the first couple series for Clark, they just got on the scoreboard and they just sort of took off. David Wright, over 400 yards passing, 7 touchdowns and no interceptions. And we were used to seeing, David Wright with maybe 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions or something like that. But the amount of passing that he did, very few blemishes. And the way Clark just came out, okay, if we got to truly outscore you, we're going to do that. Was just nothing short of remarkable. And so, I think, Clark, that the way David Wright played definitely put a lot of people on notice. the way that like the Jada Byers, the way he played at Kentucky State, there were a lot of people outside of HBCU land who were watching VUU and had an opportunity to see like what's Virginia Union like. But a lot of people now are noticing David Wright and what he did in that very first game. Now that there may be the start of like conversations at a national level as to how good he is, and so looking forward to seeing how he continues into the next game and if he can continue what he's doing, because if so, there will be conversations to be had, as we get into looking at national level awards.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Chris. So, someone put up in the chat. I do want to acknowledge the chat. Shout out to James Knox. Shout out to Tony Ebb. Let's see. James Knox says, "So hard to be the Panther." I never heard that. You ever heard that, Chris? We'll go. We'll give it to him. People get inspired. We love it. James Knox says that if Kobe, if you could put that up, the comment that he had about the two leagues, because we will get into that conversation. And the conversation is the CIAA kids were more physical than the SIAC this weekend. Both conferences need to come up together for more even matchups, but let's start respecting the CIAA contenders. Chris, I'm going to let you take this away. What are your thoughts on it? We'll solo on you and you go on this. Were they more physical, and what are your thoughts on more SIAC matchups?
Well, the CIAA was definitely more physical. I mean, we haven't talked about Virginia State, but they too had a lot to prove on the field, and definitely were a lot more seasoned of a team. And shout out to Jameel Williams, the running back, rushed for 150 yards in his second season at Virginia State. And so, between them, VUU has a very good line play, both sides of the ball. And there were even a couple, I think it was at least one person who didn't start on the defensive line for them. And it was the same thing with JCSU, a team that has struggled for a number of years with having decent line play. And they just sort of leaned on those lines to sort of wear Tuskegee down. I kept listening to the Tuskegee announcers talking about, Tuskegee, they practice in this heat. It should benefit them. No, it did not. And so, I think this is a case where, the only people in this space who probably is not really given the CIAA the respect that they deserve, it's probably the folks from the SIAC who think that they were the better league. And it showed that, at least from those three games, that no, they were not.
Yeah, I think it's great. Again, everybody, please make sure you hit the like button and share this out too as we continue to build this community. We appreciate everybody in here. Even my guy breaking down the Bulldogs. I got something for you a little bit later. I saw you last night. But no, I think it's definitely interesting. Do you feel like there should be more matchups, and do you think that it is incumbent on the top teams to create these matchups? Now, keep in mind, we have I think 8 game there have been 8 game mandates in both. Now this year, kind of iffy with St. Aug going on. But what are your thoughts on that, and how would that impact these two leagues that are? Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. They're no longer in the same space as far as the D2 playoffs. Break that down for us.
Well, they are this year, and then they transition where the CIAA will go back to Super Region 1 next year. Even if they're not in the same regions, the rules are set where if the SIAC and the CIAA played, that they're going to be considered in-region games because they share a very similar mission. And so, I think from just a dream perspective, I wish that the two conferences would come together to create like a SIAC CIAA challenge to fill the space for at least one of the non-conference games, kind of like what you would see in like basketball. for like the ACC Big Ten Challenge. I would love to see something like that happen. I think that it would be great to lock in some of those schedules. Of course, you're going to have things like money kind of factor into all that, especially given like this week is a lot of Division I games, and that involves money and not having to travel very far. That involves money. So, but I would love to see the two conferences come together to have a matchup for at least one of the weeks. I think that would be great to see that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Chris. You look at it, especially as we'll talk to this weekend with the teams over in the CIAA, as well as some SIAC teams too. There's only so many games to go around, and those games against those Division I schools, where your fan base is excited about them, and you make a little change, not a lot, but a little, depending on who you are. I think that makes it hard for us to have those types of matchups. I think it's fun. Again, I think the thing about it is the CIAA and the SIC, until they get an ESPN behind them to push for this type of rivalry that it has created within the MEAC and SWAC. I haven't been around that long, so I don't know that it always was that way. I feel like the ESPN putting the two of them together has kind of made it that way. We do know that they are going to be putting together now the Hall of Fame game, which we saw Benedict and we saw Virginia State play in this year. We do know that going forward, that is going to be I believe the champions of each league have been designated to start the season against each other. So I think that's going to be very interesting. We'll see what kind of matchup we have next year when it starts out as that championship format. But a lot of great talk there. Let us know what you guys think. I almost think, Chris, is kind of like, we're talking about the two leagues. It's almost like the conversation that people have about the MEAC and the SWAC, where, maybe there's a different brand of football on the East Coast than you're seeing in those further South leagues. A lot of people talk about MEAC football, but MEAC football, for the most part, is half of their coaches played football in the CIAA. You're talking about Trey Oliver and Dawson Odoms back in the 90s, also Damon Wilson. They played in the CIAA. So that DNA, of course, is there. What are your thoughts on that? The style of play difference? Do you feel like it's kind of similar?
I think there are definitely some differences between the style of play between the two schools. I think the CIAA has sort of evolved now, and you're starting to see a lot more passing, where there was always like this run first mentality. I think you're starting to see some of that with the SIAC. It's getting there. And you're always going to have that like anomaly, right? So like David Wright is like the anomaly, just like Amir Hall of years ago was the anomaly as to like how good they were. But I think when you just look at like the quarterbacks that the CIAA has right now, they can hurt you with their feet, they can hurt you with their arms, and I'm not sure we've quite gotten there with the SIAC just yet, but I think it's getting there eventually.
All right. So great conversation there, guys. Please continue to let us know in the chat what your thoughts are on that. But let's keep it moving forward. So again, this is the HBCU Game Day D2 football show where we talk about Division II football, CIAA, SIAC. I am SJG. He is Chris Ferguson. And we are now heading into week one. And so in week one, we'll talk about it. We'll split these up. We've got it's kind of basically two kind of matchups for the three kind of matchups, just like last week a little bit. So we got a lot of SIAC SWAC, and then the other half of the SIAC is kind of playing some CIAA schools. And then we'll talk about the MEAC. We'll talk about the CIAA a little bit later. But obviously, one that a lot of people are looking forward to, Chris, is the Alabama State Miles College game. That one is a game that Miles College won last year and nearly won a couple years ago, even though they were technically a one-win team. Just talk about Miles College. We know they, again, had a tough loss to West Georgia, but the possibility they've got something in this game because Alabama State, for those of us who saw Sunday's game, the XWAC Challenge, their quarterback position didn't look great already on Sunday, and now it's looking like one of, if not both of their guys that they played with under center may not be there, which I don't know. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Oh, for one of them, obviously for Mr. Body, he's a dynamic guy. But what are your thoughts about Miles' chances of pulling off the upset against Alabama State?
Well, poor Andrew got bodied by NCCU, man, if you're telling me that their top two quarterbacks are not available, Andrew Body actually had like the most rushing yards at that level for the SWAC, I believe, and he was the quarterback. So I'm a little concerned about Alabama State's offense going into this game, and that doesn't bode well for the Miles defense if they could stay relatively fresh and keep the Hornets off the field on offense. I like Miles's chances in this game. And for the record, I hate these games. I don't like these games. I don't really think that. Yeah, it could kind of help with recruiting, but I do not like FCS versus D2 games.
I was waiting for this. I was going to bring that up.
You knew it was coming. I don't like this game because what are you going to get? Couple $1,000 thrown at you. The FCS school, you got to travel to them. They're going to have all these fans in the stands. They get the gate and all that, and you already at a disadvantage scholarship wise. Like, it's too many and it doesn't count for the Division II playoffs. So there's that. Like
playoffs.
It's too early for playoffs. But I understand a lot of it, but I'm kind of like Henry Frazier III. I don't like these games. But I do like Miles. I like Miles' chance in this game. I really do.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of that fence, Chris. I just am. I think in certain games when it makes sense. I think, college football in its purest form is about rivalry. It's about pride. It's about us versus them. We wear red, they wear blue. We're not banging, but we both have it, and also, HBCUs have obviously, you went to HBCU, you went to a great HBCU, you went to the best HBCU. So, there's these ties that are there that are bigger than football. And, I think that's what makes that's what makes them interesting. Just from that standpoint of it. And we've shown, just like last year, and we'll get there. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but HBCUs at the D2 level have shown that when you have a good D2 HBCU and a not so great FCS opponent, even in this day, even now, even with the 36 and a lot of these schools don't have 36 versus 60 scholarships, we've shown that we can compete. And, and for one, I think there's a lot of pride there, too. Even we'll go back to, Bowie State with Amir Hall. They played, I believe it was Wagner. And, they didn't get the win, but, Amir put on a really good showing there against them. Almost got them to the win as well. So, I like these games, and we'll talk a little bit later. I like them, but I do understand. I like certain matchups. And with that said, it kind of depends on. I like it when there is a historical tie, a solid historical tie. So, we look at the schedule for the SIAC, Chris, and we got a couple more of these games. We'll just kind of go briefly. So we've got those guys, the thoroughbreds that you saw. They're going to be taking on Alabama A&M University. Now, Alabama A&M played its own money game last week against in-state foe Auburn. I think they've been mandated to do that. And so, they got pounded. Kentucky State played somebody that actually lost by more than them. So, There is one positive there. You know, and so I don't know, Chris, is the pressure now on Alabama A&M to score 70 points?
Yes. I mean, yes. First of all, Maynard said he thought that they had a chance against Auburn. Come on, bro. Like, really? And it wasn't even close. They didn't score a touchdown in that game. But now you're going against a Kentucky State team that is doing a lot of soul searching after that first game at home. Really just didn't see a whole lot on offense. The passing game was just inaccurate. You know, the quarterback's running for his life. I don't think that this is going to end very well for the Thoroughbreds. I think Alabama A&M is definitely going to take their frustrations out on somebody.
Yeah, well, you know, Conor Manor, you know, he does have, he does have a history, you know, but hey, he was right a couple times, you know, he's still gonna be him. A horse is a horse, of course, unless it plays Jada Byers, and then it is just, horse meat on the ground. And yeah, so yeah, Alabama A&M, the pressure is on you, Maynard. Jason my guy Taylor. You guys got to do a 70, man. Come on now. You guys are at home. Sorry, Kentucky State. So, you know, I don't think that there's they both used to be an SIC, maybe kind of the same time. Don't think there's a historical tie there, but okay. Then we got Lane and Jackson State. Now, this game was actually supposed to play, I believe, last year, and it didn't happen. You know, whatever. So, you know, you got Jackson State coming off a loss to U. They played up last week. They played against ULM, played pretty solidly against them, and weren't able to come up with a win until they got in the fourth quarter. Their play calling was very questionable, very vanilla, and they played like they had the lead, in my opinion. This week they'll take on Lane. You know, Lane is, you think about the contenders in the SIC, you don't think about Lane. But they do have, you know, they did beat Tennessee State a couple years back under Eddie George. And, you know, Jackson State historically has had some trouble with some D2 teams. We remember the same Kentucky State program, obviously a different cast of characters, you know, pre-Deion Sanders. We will say his name on this show. They did lose to Jackson State. Jackson State did lose to Kentucky State. So, some ancient history. I don't expect history to repeat itself at all. Which game? And then we've also got Savannah State and Southern. This is another game that I don't think really has any type of significance historically. We're going to get to that. Shame. That doesn't really have any historical significance, but hey, Southern needs to get feeling good about themselves after last week, where our guy Terrence Graves, 7-0 and 7-0, and that was all she wrote there. Which of these games do you feel like will probably have the biggest margin of defeat?
Were we including Kentucky State and Alabama A&M or
no? All three.
That's the one. That's the one that's going to have the biggest margin defeat.
Okay.
Another one.
Okay. All right. You guys let us know in the chat what you think. Which is and you know, there is one more SIAC game that we'll go ahead and we'll talk. And we'll go ahead and talk about it now. SIAC D2 game, and that is Tuskegee versus Grambling State. We saw Tuskegee. I'm sorry. We saw Grambling State played against, I think, Louisiana Lafayette, and they took a loss. FBS team. They played up. Now they're going to play against a Tuskegee team that they got outgained by Johnson C. Smith. Johnson C. Smith smacked Tuskegee in the mouth. And they just, I think you said they just didn't score a lot of points, but a nearly 400 yards of offense from Johnson C. Smith. What are you expecting against Grambling State? We saw what they did last year against Alabama A&M. That's a little later in the season. They'll say they were a little less fresh, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm looking to see if Tuskegee can make some adjustments here. I mean, I think they really got to figure out what they want to do on offense, because I think that's really going to be the key to how they sort of control and manage the game. They have two great running backs in the backfield. So there are quite a few things that they can do if they want to be competitive in this game. You know, these FCS games are all about keeping the other offense off the field, mainly to try to control the clock and time possession, and make sure your guys don't get worn out. There are a lot of pieces that Tuskegee have that they can be competitive in this game, but does it kind of come down to roster management? I think we just need to see.
Yeah, it's definitely a chance for them to try to redeem themselves, not only from what happened to them in their own classic in Alabama earlier this week against Johnson C. Smith, but also a chance for them to redeem themselves from what happened last year when they went over to Alabama A&M and got it handed to them pretty well. So we will have to see what Tuskegee has. We'll see what happens with Tuskegee. But let's go on. We got some D2 matchups. So let's go ahead and talk about them. We'll start off with the CIAA versus SIAC, Albany State versus Shaw. Now, Shaw, we talked about Albany State a little bit, how they got punished by Valdosta State, who looks to be Valdosta State again. Shaw at home, for some god-awful reason, they decided to play in the middle of the day in Durham. It was tough. They played against Elizabeth City State, up 17. Elizabeth City State mounts a little bit of a comeback, but wasn't able to pull it away. So they get the first win. They're 1-0. Talk to me about this Albany State Shaw matchup. What do you see? What do you see with both teams having played in week 0?
Well, both of these teams are really going to have to figure out how to get into the end zone. Albany State actually racked up a lot of yards in their matchup. They just couldn't punch it in. Shaw kind of sort of the same. What I didn't like about Shaw was how they just sort of let off the gas. It was like, man, they could really truly run away with this, and then ECSU sort of adjusted and they crawl their way back into that game. But I do like the fact that Shaw is going to be, pretty close to full strength going into this game. And it's a lot to ask to knock off the preseason contender for the SIAC, but they'll have their shots.
Yeah, imagine they're gonna be fired up. They lost to Valdosta State. They took it on the chin last week, and then they get to come home to the new blue turf. So I'm sure that'll be exciting there. So I do have the Massey for this week. Just a couple of the scores that we already talked about. Alabama State is still favored to beat Miles, 34-13. So then we have let's see. Okay. Then we have I told you I was on the phone. So then we also have Lane Jackson State. Jackson State is a 38-point favorite, 37.5, 45-7 there. Kentucky State versus Alabama A&M. Ooh. Alabama A&M is only a 30.5 favorite, according to Massey. 45-14. They still love them to get the win. And then let's see. Yeah, so those are a couple of them. So as far as Albany State goes, we do have them predicted to win 26-14. So Miles 23, Alabama State 20. Okay, we see you. Let's go to our next game. We have Bowie State heads over to Hickory to take on the powerful Bears of Lenoir-Rhyne University. Chris, your thoughts on this game? Bowie State, obviously we know what they did for the second half of the 2010s. The run that they put together into the first season of this decade until Coach Wilson decided he was ready to go on to East Baltimore. So this is a matchup. They continue to play these games against out of conference PWIs. Last year they played Davenport, lost to those guys. This year they've got Lenoir-Rhyne. What are your thoughts on this game, Chris? I'm really interested.
I love this game.
Of course you love this game.
I love this game.
Of course you love this.
Now last time we saw Lenoir-Rhyne playing Bowie State was in the playoffs, and Bowie took it to them. But unfortunately, some of those players are not walking through that door. The one thing you need to know about Lenoir-Rhyne is that they do have a new coaching staff, and with that came a lot of roster turnover. And so, they don't have Dwayne McGee. They don't have John Ross May at linebacker. He went to Utah State, and a number of other players that were really good that are no longer on that team that went to the national semifinals a year ago. Now backups, they were also pretty good. And so I think now, does this become an issue about depth? And Lenoir-Rhyne is not an easy place to play at all. It's a nice stadium, lovely stadium, a lot of new stuff in there. Now I went to go see them, see the stadium when Virginia State played them. And Virginia State got behind early and never really caught up. And the coach was an NAIA coach, but he was also he was at Keiser, a national champion coach. So they're going to come in with a pretty decent pedigree. Who do I really choose in this game? I really want to see what the Bulldogs can do to consistently move the chains. They have not been a great running team over the last couple seasons, which puts a lot of pressure on the passing game and what the quarterback can do with their legs. They seem to have found something on quarterback, but is it consistent enough to beat Lenoir-Rhyne? I just don't know. I just don't know. I'm not feeling it. It's not an upset I'm feeling right now.
Okay, so yeah.
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll admit if I'm wrong. I just don't see it right now. I just don't. I need to see something out of Bowie. And I'm tempted to go to this game, but I don't know.
Chris, if you'd have asked me this 24 hours ago, I'd have been with you. I'd have been tempted to say Bowie too. But you know what? I'm still not going to be a hater like some people. I would like to see Bowie State win this game.
We want to see them.
I'd like to see them win the game. Will they win? I don't know. But you know what? After picking North Carolina A&T by 30 yesterday, after all the cheerleading and pom-pom shaking for the CIAA last week, breaking down the Bulldogs, don't catch a flat tire on 52. That's all I'm gonna say. But good luck to them. I like Coach Jackson and what he's done. It's tough when you get to a certain level of success to sustain that success. Those last 2 years have been 6-4, which a lot of us would have loved to have been 6-4 these last couple of years. But I think this is gonna be a key year for them to see whether or not they get back to that championship form, or whether they kind of whether they're kind of stuck in that second tier that they've been in the last couple of years. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with them. Over at Massey, let's see what they have there. Massey, Massey has Lenoir-Rhyne as a 28.5 point favorite. 28.5 point favorite, giving Bowie State a 2% chance to win, and 35-6. So hey, if you're getting a D2 betting league, put a little money on the Bulldogs. They might win you something. We shall go on. That was not me. That was not me. That was not me. Let's see. Johnson C. Smith last week. They went down to Tuskegee. They went down to Alabama. They weren't in Tuskegee. They were in Montgomery. This week they don't go quite as far. They go to Atlanta. That drive to Atlanta from Charlotte is hellacious. I don't wish that on anybody. Yeah, they'll be playing Morehouse. Morehouse gave Edward Waters a game, somewhat, sort of, somehow. I think. I had to catch the score from Edward Waters, but that's another story. Yeah, Johnson C. Smith. Is there any way they don't? How many points do they need to win by this to make you feel good?
30.
Okay.
They need. I mean, can they get there? Yes, I think so. Man, Morehouse, they scored 11 points. Really?
Yeah, that's what they say. There were no. That's what they say. 11 points, according to the Edward Waters.
Was this one of the schools you were talking about?
Let's move on, Chris. Let's move on. We got people in the A. Okay. Fayetteville State and UNC Pembroke. The Two Rivers Classics, what they called it. Chris, talk to me about this game last year. Fayetteville State, we know they were finally able to break through. And was it 2 years ago?
That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah, because last year they had the heartbreak.
Yes.
And they checked back in. Yeah. Back to losing to UNC Pembroke. Always been a challenge for Fayetteville State. They did not play last week. They were one of the teams, along with Bowie State and a couple others that didn't play last week. What are your expectations for this game, Chris? What are you feeling? We know that UNC Pembroke is coached by the former coach of Chowan. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on this game? They've had many battles.
Well, the one thing that kind of stands out is Pembroke's already going in with one game played under the belt, and they kind of know what may work and what doesn't work. And I could tell you one thing that wasn't working for Pembroke was their special teams, because the deficit was nothing more than extra points and a field goal that they all had chances to convert. They couldn't convert the first one, so they went for two, couldn't convert that. Field goals were no good. And so that kind of shows you that if they're getting into these close games, man, they're looking a little suspect right now. They got a lot of pieces on offense and defense to make things work, but I didn't necessarily see anything that says that Fayetteville State doesn't have a chance in this game. It's going to be a low scoring affair.
They like that
again. Yeah, and that favors Fayetteville State, right? I mean, they're not sexy, but they're reliable. It's like a SpongeBob. You open up the case, reliable. That's what Fayetteville State is. So I like Fayetteville's chances in this game, but I mean it's going to be a chess match, and it always is between Richard Hayes and Mark Hall. So
yeah, they meet again. So with that one, let's see what Massey has on that. All right,
you already know what they're gonna say.
Let's see. We got okay. Yeah, well, we'll come back to that one. So we've got that game, and now, Chris, we also have another one. We'll just mention it. We got a couple others. We do have Elizabeth City State taking on Chowan, former CIAA member Chowan. Do you expect Elizabeth City State to have a chance in this game?
Yes, absolutely. So Elizabeth City, the first half against Shaw, they just looked dead. I was just like, y'all had a whole offseason, and this is all you were able to put together. You throw Chase Williams out there at quarterback. He's just not the answer. I'm sorry. I don't like to down anybody like that, but he's shown me enough that, like, he go in for a quarterback for like a half, and then you're like, okay, who's behind him? Let's just go ahead and get him out here right now. And so they had DeMarcus Creasy, who came out, was very efficient as a passer. He was the one that sort of willed Elizabeth City back into that game. and I expect him to get the start against Chowan. This is a rivalry game for these two schools, and Chowan has not had a lot of luck since moving over to the Gulf South out of necessity after they got kicked out of the CIAA, and so
they did it to themselves. They did it to themselves.
So
I'm sorry.
This is a rivalry game given proximity to each other, and yes, I do think that Elizabeth City has a chance in this game. I absolutely do.
Okay. Speaking of having a chance, Johnson C. Smith is only a 6.5 point favorite over Morehouse, according to Massey.
Oh, that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable.
So take that for what it's worth. It is Massey. And
how many points? How many points do they think they're going to score between the two?
They think it'll be a 27-20 game. 45.5 is the line. So yeah, there's that. We'll throw this out there as well. Clark Atlanta is playing at home on the Thundercat red turf. They will be taking on, guess who? Allen University. So that'll be interesting. Keenis Boulware and his defense will get a chance to throw what they can at at Clark Atlanta, at David Wright, at former number quarterback 1. If they've got anything left there from the previous administration, they'll get a chance to take on them as well. So that'll be interesting. I do know that they were in our studio over in Atlanta. So shout out to Coach Keaton for being a friend of the program. Definitely appreciate that. And let's see. We also had a couple other lines too. We had Grambling as a 37-7 favorite over Tuskegee. Elizabeth City State, they expect this game. Chowan is an 8.5 point favorite. 28-20 over Elizabeth City State. And UNC Pembroke, they also agree, Chris. It is a low-scoring affair. Well, not too low-scoring. Actually, it will be above Fayetteville State's average. They predict a 24-22 win for UNC Pembroke.
Take the under. That's going to be under.
Oh, okay. There we go. We're taking the under there. And then another game too. We'll go ahead and mention them briefly. I already talked about them. Livingstone College. I got a chance to see them earlier last week. They looked all out of sorts in that first quarter. They came alive, shot themselves in the blue paws as many times as they could, and they are. But this week they are taking on the Mystic Dragons of Virginia Lynchburg. Virginia University of Lynchburg, better otherwise known as VUL. Livingstone is a 8.5 point favorite here at home over VUL.
What?
Yeah, they're an 8.5 point favorite.
Come on, son. What? No. It should be more. Come on, Livingstone. Where are the Livingstone people? Come on. That's got to be better than that. They're better than that.
Yeah, man. Well, that's what they got them as. And as I mentioned, we will finish things up with a trio of old school CIAA games. Your favorite variety, Chris. But I gotta hear you. Your favorite. So we'll start off with Big State, Little State. Big State being Virginia State University, and Little State being Norfolk State University. Obviously, we know what happened last year, Chris. Norfolk State found a way to lose this game. Virginia State found a way to win as they started off, I believe, 6-0. Was it 7-0? Yeah, and they looked like they were, going to be that team. Boat race them. What, we saw last week, Virginia State offense wasn't super amazing, but, they played, they won by, 2 scores. Talk to me about that game. And, do you think that what you saw out of Virginia State that feels like maybe they could have a chance to do this again?
Well, did Norfolk State play last week or no?
They did. They played East Carolina.
What was the score there? How did he do there?
I don't have the score for that game in front of me. I do just recall them playing against FAMU, and they seemed to play okay there till the end. If you just go by what you saw in that game, they still don't trust their quarterback. I don't think to throw. They were able to really break off some great runs against Florida A&M. Do you think that there is a repeat in sight for VSU, or do you think that that difference is going to come back to bite them this year?
I think the thing that scares me a little bit about VSU right now is the run defense. Benedict was able to break off some pretty big runs, especially if you have a mobile quarterback like Trey Simmons, the transfer from who he was at Tuskegee, then he went to McNeese, and now he's at Benedict. And he was able to get some good runs against VSU. So, if Norfolk's got something like that in their bag, then hey, they might be able to do something. And so I'm curious to see the running back versus the defensive line, how that plays out. Because if they don't have a pass game, the Norfolk's going to definitely have their hands full. VSU's got quite a bit of weapons. They got an experienced quarterback. They got a running back that seems that he's a workhorse. I was a little wondering if he could really hold up in that role, and so far so good. And they've got some weapons at wide receiver as well, and they got an experienced O-line. That recipe has been the recipe for VSU winning in this game over the years. Is when VSU is experienced and Norfolk State has a lot of questionable aspects that VSU it's close. It's always close, but they're able to pull it off in the end. So this is one.
Is there a doom alert for this game?
Yeah, I would say so. I think Norfolk's got their. I think they've got their hands full here. I really do.
Give it to me. I need it. I need it, Chris.
It's a doom alert here. It's a whole doom alert here. Absolutely.
All right. And then we'll go across the bay elsewhere in the 757. We will go to Hampton, to Venerable Armstrong Stadium, to two of the programs who have two of the oldest, most venerable stadiums in all of HBCU football and all of college football. Virginia Union, Hampton University. This is a rivalry that goes back. These are two founding members of the CIAA way back when Hampton was the Institute. Two private schools in Virginia had a fierce rivalry for a long time. And then, Union for a long time was the better team in this matchup for 50 plus years. Then Hampton goes and gets Virginia Union's head coach and takes him to Hampton and goes D1, and history is written again. 2019, Chris, we saw these two teams match up, and early in the Dr. Alvin Parker era, and great running team, horrible defense, and we saw Virginia Union come out with a win with Tobias Taylor and those guys. Chris, how are you feeling? I mean, you saw these guys up close and personal last year. You saw them up close and personal last week. You saw their linemen on both sides, which are always a strength. What are your thoughts on this game? And could we possibly have a rare double doom alert this week?
Well, Virginia Union really came out, and once they settled down with R.J. Rosales, they were able to do some things in the passing game. And so, the one that really stands out about VUU is how deep they are on the offensive and the defensive line. They're deep on the offensive line. They're deeper on the defensive line. And so do they have chances? Yes, they got a stable running backs that can wear you down, and they've got the guys to run with it. And yes, I do think that Hampton legit can go 0-2. I think that this is also a doom alert. I think
doom
so.
Alert.
I think so. I think so.
Fire of that double doom alert, because this is rare. So
yeah.
And they also, I will also give them this, they have played against top D2 competition over the last couple of years. They played in the playoffs, and like I know some of those top D2 teams, for sure are definitely comparable to FCS teams, kind of at the bottom. And so, I see a lot of similarities between that team and this team. Obviously, Jada Byers and I think what did Wiley call him? Strictly Business. Tobias Taylor. They're different type of backs, but both of those guys can run that rock, and they can go ahead and go undefeated, and they can got breakaway speed. And I think again, the key is if the Union has a passing game, they can really do something. You know what, Cole? Do you feel like coming up and talking because you saw those two teams play this year? Are you able to come up and give us a little bit? Because you saw Hampton last week. Are you good to go?
What's up, party people? How's everything going?
Right. Yeah. He is a real person. He's not AI. Don't let him fool you.
So it's I wasn't ready for this, but the thing that we have to see is if they can handle Hampton's running game. If their D-line can handle Hampton's running game and get the offense back on the field, they might light it up for another 50. Their defense played well, but they were prone to giving up big plays. And all it takes for those running backs at Union is a space, a half an inch, and Jada can go for 60 or 70 at a blink of an eye. So that's the problem. They give up too many big plays, and it's going to be real, real interesting. You might make me take that trip. I might have to take that trip to Hampton to get that game. But I think Hampton, their offense can run the ball. And so that's going to be the big thing. And the other thing is Zealous didn't play the second half against Morgan, and Mays played better, and he got some wheels. So they're going to have to contain that offense.
So here's a question. How many times did Morgan attempt a pass on Saturday against Hampton?
Oh, shucks.
8.
8.
Yeah, I was going to say. And he was 5 for 8 or 6 for 8.
He was 5 for 8. 8 passes attempted. That means that they took they went old school CIAA in this game. And all they did was run the ball. Rush for 283 yards on 55 attempts. You just don't see that anymore unless you're like Harding that has like the option offense. Like, I mean, that says a whole lot. That's ball control and time of possession and everything.
They went back to pre-Amir Hall buoy.
Ooh.
They went back to pre-Amir Hall buoy.
Now, there's some things about Morgan, but that's a whole other thing. They use some other things besides, like, they moved them around. And I think the way Parker coaches his offense can get them out of place, and then they give up big plays. That back seven, that front seven gives up too many big plays, man.
Yeah.
Well, Cole, we didn't plan to have you on here, but I should have anyway, but you hopped on anyway, so we appreciate you. We'll let you hit behind the boards because we got one game to go with. I appreciate everybody that has been rocking with us. Please make sure you guys are hitting the thumbs up. I mean, if you come in the stream, please hit it. It's something really small that goes a long way. We appreciate everybody rocking with us. So, come on, man. I'm throwing Union's stadium under the bus like that, man. It's historic. It's venerable Hovey Field. You respect that, man. You respect that. The 11-time CIAA champions. Respect it. All right.
That's the player haters ball. Hate.
Well, he does hate on someone else other than rarely. All right. And lastly, we finish up right down the road from me, a rivalry that both you and I are very familiar with. Winston-Salem State will travel, hit I-40 East head over to East Greensboro and bring the flea repellent and take on North Carolina's A&T for the first time since 2010. Chris, this is again, this is why I don't hate the D1, D2 thing. Obviously, when you and I were in school, this was definitely a game. This game actually goes back. I did a lot of research on it. Actually goes back 80 years. Next month, October 7th, will be 80 years since they played each other. The Aggies were arrogant then. They're arrogant now. They were better funded then. They're better funded now. They thought they were better than us then. They think they're better than us now. Just kind of the way things are. But seriously, this is a series that, in the last 50 years since Bill Hayes came to Winston-Salem State, really became a competitive series, and there's a lot of energy around this game. But Chris, we had a chance to see Winston-Salem State. Well, first off, I had a chance to see who was it that I saw? I saw Wake Forest. A&T finally found their way back to Winston-Salem. It was the wrong side of town, but they finally found their way back to Winston-Salem, and they put up a 45-13 loss and they were pretty happy about it, I thought. So there's that. We had Winston-Salem State. They went up to Bluefield State, which we all know they are predicted to finish last in the CIAA. A team that they beat 30-0 last year. They did a lot of talking beforehand about what they were going to do. Didn't quite come up with the score that they wanted, but pretty dominant in the game. We do have a clip. Dalen Lee, quarterback, one of his 2 touchdowns that he threw. He was under the weather. So, Cole, play that clip, and then we'll talk about this.
Lee steps up, fires deep across the middle, wide open. At the 30, it's caught. A foot race to the end zone and a touchdown, Winston-Salem State. 56 yards. Lee.
Yeah, so that was Dalen Lee. Again, he had a solid game. Not quite 200 yards passing, but he did throw 4, and he did get taken out in the second half. But he did show his legs. I know he talked to you guys about that last year, or at media day. He talked to you guys about him wanting to use his legs a little bit more. 43 rushing yards. Chris, what were your thoughts? Yes, it was rent to own. Break it. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Breaking down the Bulldogs. We like when you pick against WSSU. Right now, you're not doing too hot, brother. Yeah, that rent. That rent. They need to hit you up for that. But Chris, what were your thoughts about WSSU in this game?
Well, Lee didn't need to pass the 200 yards. He almost got 200 yards total offense with that rushing amount, but he didn't really need to do too much because Bluefield just kept giving them great field position. Like, their special teams was just awful. And so, would I have liked them to have done a little bit more scoring? Absolutely. I think they could have. I think they left some points on the field. Because I think if Winston State had got to like 40, I just really felt like that would have set really good vibes to a lot of and show that, hey, maybe this team has something now because they're able to put up a lot of points. So I just don't think they did enough, in my opinion, to feel really great in there. And if you're Bluefield State, you got a lot to work on. I was really wondering, where was Isaiah Teal here? Because he didn't play in the game, even though he came to media day. So maybe he's got an injury or something. But they have their work cut out for him because the schedule is not any pretty, especially now they're going to a nearby rival in Concord. So.
Yeah, Chris. So you gave us 2 doom alerts. North Carolina A&T, they played. I will say this: they did play better on offense than they did the previous year. Better being a relative term because they were just god awful. But they were able to run the ball, which not surprising. North Carolina A&T, they run the ball, but they were also able to get something out of their passing game. KJ White, he's got another year under his belt. This game, but they're still looking for their second win in 21 months. They got the win against Norfolk State last year. What are you expecting out of this result, and what are you looking to see from this result? Obviously, there's a lot of excitement around it, but what are you looking for to see out of it?
Well, I'm really looking to see. I think Winston State's going to find themselves in some degree of adversity, and how they respond to that is really going to show where this team goes from here. If this is a close game overall, I feel pretty good about it. If it's a blowout because A&T shows a lot of depth early on, then I would like to see how they play in the second half and whether they're able to put up some points there. But I'm just really looking to see what can Winston-Salem State do against better competition than last week, even if it's just the second half. What can they do there? Because if they do something, I'll feel all right going into the rest of the season. A&T did have a rusher for over 100 yards, 121 yards. That's saying a lot here. And that means that, Winston State's going to have their hands full on defense. And I wonder maybe if Dalen Lee needs to run a little bit more, but I'm almost scared to say that because this is a game where you almost don't want to take those chances either. So, there's a lot in this game that's going to be, the biggest crowd that Winston's going to face this season.
Yeah, agitating Aggies is one of my favorite pastimes. It may be my favorite pastime. And so, since HBCU game day has been around, they have not played each other. That's how long it's been since they played each other. I would love nothing more for them to win this game. But I feel like you, Chris, if I'm honest, I feel like, I want to see a close game, a close effort. I feel like this game kind of gives me a little bit. I think the last time they've been in sort of this position was the 2021 game when they played North Carolina Central. North Carolina Central at that point, they hadn't become the North Carolina Central that they were the last 2 years, where Winston-Salem State literally had no chance. They were a top 25 FCS team. But that first year, they had some injuries, and I saw A&T take a couple L's injury-wise and some heat stuff. So we'll see. Hopefully everybody's okay. But I think, again, if they come into this game and they keep it close and competitive, then I think that bodes well for them. I think they are a more experienced team. I think the last couple of years, I don't think that they're going to be afraid of the talent or anything like that. The last couple of years playing against Central, this A&T team is not better than either of those Central teams. And so I think it'll just be the atmosphere that, they'll have to see what they can get up for. But if they keep it close, then you feel like, then maybe there's some hope for them to really be competitive in the CIAA. I feel like this game could be away. I feel like it could be a blowout. I feel like it could be close. And damn it, I feel like Winston-Salem State could sneak out of Aggie Stadium, BB&T, whatever they're calling it these days, Truist Stadium, with the win. Call me an optimist. Damn it, for once I'll be one. So we'll see. But here we are, end of the road. We've gone for quite a while, so I appreciate everybody. Oh yeah, Lincoln's playing Clarion. They beat them last year. Because initially I wasn't going to talk about everybody, but we did kind of get it. Lincoln is playing Clarion. This game last year, was this a win for them or this was a close loss?
No, it was a close loss. Lincoln picked it up in the second half, but it wasn't enough to catch up. So.
Right. So, it'll be interesting for them to get this to go out there and get this non-conference win and to see if they're ready to take that next step up. They won 3 games 2 years ago, 4 games last year. They were very, they seem to be trending in the right direction. Can they, well, there is no more Norfolk now. So can they, I think they were picked to finish 7th. Can they get into that top 5? Will there be a situation where, they knock off this year? This year they knock off one of the 3 Axis powers of the North in Virginia Union, Virginia State and Bowie State. So it'll be interesting for sure. They also take on Johnson C. Smith as well. Chris, what are your thoughts on this game?
Clarion actually beat Millersville, another team that was on the rise in the PSAC, and so Lincoln's got their hands. They got their hands full on the road in this game. They cannot afford a slow start. This is a Thursday night game, so we'd actually have the opportunity to watch this game sooner rather than later. So football starts tomorrow for us.
I might as well throw them in there too. West Virginia's playing Barton. West Virginia State is playing Barton. Wish them a little love, even though they got to come over here to the HBCU side and play some folks at home on the road. Don't be scared. So we've got I got a couple more Massey scores. They think Bluefield State is only a 6.5-point underdog to Concord. Let's see. Winston-Salem State, they have WSSU as a 31.5-point underdog. Would not at all. I don't see that. They got Norfolk State as a 7.5-point favorite over Virginia State. And then Hampton and Union, they have Hampton 31-24 over Union. We could see that score, but maybe the other way. We don't know. We'll see. But look, Chris, man, we've gotten through another week. This is week 1/week 2. What are your thoughts? Where are you going? I'll be over in East Greensboro with my fleece spray. Where will you be?
I'll be home this week.
Okay.
There's a lot going on I need to handle. So I'm looking forward to being home. Lots of TV, lots of games to watch, lots to keep up with. So I'll be really working the X handle this weekend.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll tweet you some scores unless you got Flow Sports over at for the CAA games. So yeah. But appreciate everybody for rocking with us. This has been fun. As always, please, guys, make sure you share the content and like the content and continue to represent for D2 football, HBCU style. We definitely appreciate it for Chris, for Kobe. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll go ahead and play the outro, and we will see you on the next side. D2's up, D1's down.
It's SJG, D2, HBCU football.
Sleep on Livingstone if you want to, and they can really punish you for it.
Fayetteville State, they're never sexy, but they won.
Sometimes we have to eat our crow, and I got to eat my crow this week, okay?
Doom alert. Yeah, we're back at Heartbreak Hotel, and we're checking back in.